The last U.S. military planes have left Afghanistan, marking the end of the United States' longest war. CNN, the last U.S. military planes have left Afghanistan. General Frank McKenzie, the commander of U.S. Central Command, announced Monday at the Pentagon. The U.S. departure marks the end of the flawed, chaotic, and bloody exit from the United States' longest war. I'm here to announce the completion of our withdrawal from Afghanistan and the end of the military mission to evacuate the American citizens, third country nationals, and the vulnerable Afghans, McKenzie told the reporters. The last C-17 lifted off from Hamid Karzai International Airport on August 30 this afternoon at 3:29 p.m. East Coast time, and the last manned aircraft is now clearing the airspace above Afghanistan. There's a lot of heartbreak associated with this departure, McKenzie said. We did not get everybody out that we wanted to get out. President Joe Biden went in with a statement later on Monday and thanked the final U.S. forces serving in Afghanistan for executing the dangerous retrograde from Afghanistan as scheduled, with no further loss of American lives. The past 17 days have seen our troops execute the largest airlift in U.S. history, evacuating over 120,000 U.S. citizens of our allies and Afghan allies of the United States. We have done it with unmatched courage, professionalism, and resolve, the president said in a statement. He said he will make the address about Afghanistan to the nation on Tuesday. Now our 20-year military presence in Afghanistan have ended, Biden said. As of Monday, more than 122,000 people in total had been airlifted from Hamid Karzai International Airport since July, Pentagon spokesman John Kirby told the reporters Monday morning. Since August 14, the Pentagon deployed the U.S. Special Operations Forces to bring in 1,064 U.S. citizens and 2,017 at-risk Afghans or special immigrant visa applicants, McKenzie said. We have evacuated more than 6,000 U.S. civilians, which we believe represent the vast majority of those who wanted to leave at this time, he said. There were no U.S. citizens on the last 5 flights out of Kabul, McKenzie said, and no evacuees left at the airport when the last 2 U.S. officials, General Christopher Donohue and the embassy's charge affairs Rose Wilson, stepped off Afghan soil and onto the final U.S. aircraft leaving Afghanistan. With no U.S. diplomat remaining in the country, a senior State Department official said that they expected the U.S. Embassy in Kabul to suspend embassy operations, but added that doesn't mean that we are suspending any commitment to American citizens in Afghanistan, to at-risk Afghans, to the Afghan people. Reopening the airport, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in Monday evening remarks that U.S. work in Afghanistan is not over and that the Biden administration's commitment to help Americans, U.S. legal permanent residents, and Afghans leave the country will continue. America's work in Afghanistan continues. We have a plan for what's next, what's putting it into action, Blinken said from the State Department. For now, he said, the U.S. will move its diplomatic presence in Afghanistan to Doha, Qatar. Blinken said the State Department will help Americans leave Afghanistan no matter when they make the decision to do so. Our commitment to them and to all Americans in Afghanistan and everywhere in the world continues, he said. The top U.S. diplomat said that the U.S. will also continue to help Afghans who work with the U.S. and want to leave as well. Part of that effort, Blinken said, involves the discussions now underway with the U.S. allies about ways to reopen Kabul airport as quickly as possible to facilitate safe travel out of Afghanistan for Americans, U.S. legal permanent residents, and Afghans who work with the U.S. Blinken, who held a virtual conference with other foreign ministers on Monday morning, said, "We discussed how we will work together to facilitate safe travel out of Afghanistan, including by reopening Kabul's civilian airport as soon as possible." Nearly 2 decades. We very much appreciate the effort of Qatar and Turkey in particular to make this happen, Blinken added. This would enable a small number of daily charter flights, which is the key for anyone who wants to depart from Afghanistan moving forward. The U.S. withdrawal Monday marks the first time in nearly 2 decades that American troops have not been on the ground in Afghanistan. After $2 trillion in spending and nearly 2,000 U.S. troops killed in action, the pullout also raised questions about the utility of war that saw the service of parents and then their grown children. Nearly 20 years after the U.S. invaded Afghanistan to avenge the terror attacks of September 11, 2001, and the strike at Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, which hosted Osama bin Laden, another American administration is leaving the country in the control of Taliban militants who still maintain close ties to the Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations. Even as Biden pulls the U.S. from the country, Afghanistan looks likely to shadow him politically and engage him militarily. On Monday, White House officials said the president is continuing the hunt from terrorists in the country, telling its military commanders to stop at nothing to avenge the death of 13 U.S. service members at Kabul airport last week. The Americans who remain in Afghanistan may become another reliability for the administration. A senior State Department official said the department believes that there are fewer than 250 American citizens currently in Afghanistan who may still wish to leave, as U.S. officials stress the Taliban commitment to let Afghans leave the country after the U.S. and allies withdrawal. We believe that there is still a smaller number who remain, and we are trying to determine exactly how many, the official told the reporters Monday. We are going through many paths of people who have departed. We are calling and texting and WhatsApping and emailing our list in an effort to have a more concrete figure regarding how many Americans may remain. In the 24 hours leading up to Monday morning, 26 military C-17 aircraft lifted off from Kabul carrying 1,020 evacuees, according to General Hank Taylor, the Deputy Director of Regional Operations for the Joint Staff, who spoke alongside Kirby at the Pentagon briefing earlier Monday. In total, 28 flights departed from Kabul airport in that 24 hours window, Taylor said. In the same 24-hour period, the U.S. conducted a drone strike that killed multiple civilians, including children. The Kabul airport was targeted by rocket fire and military officials continues to warn of active specific threat to the evacuation airport. The threat stream is still real, it's still active, and in many cases it's still specific, Kirby said at the Monday morning briefing when asked if another attack on the airport was still likely. Taylor added that military operations were continuing with a focus on the security of the U.S. troops in Kabul, and the military would have a capability to evacuate Afghans until the very end. We are taking it very seriously and we are right up till the end, Kirby said. Along with the military exit, the U.S. is pulling out the old diplomatic representation, leaving open the question of whether it will formally recognize the Taliban as the rulers of Afghanistan. The former military and diplomatic retrograde is ending even as the U.S. leaves behind Americans, some of whom did not want to leave and others who may have already left, according to State Department officials, as well as vulnerable Afghans who worked for the U.S. military and now face possible Taliban retaliation. That tragically unfinished visions will become part of the broader political challenge that Biden faces as he enters the second half of his first year in office. As a devastating hurricane batters the South and the COVID-19 pandemic once again gains traction, Biden is also facing calls for the accounting of the Afghanistan withdrawal. The airlift, which started as a seemingly haphazard and hastily organized effort, was scarred by the death of 13 service members last week and the death sentence hanging over Afghan translators who helped the U.S. troops and diplomats who were unable to escape the country. In addition, Biden's decision to leave will be shadowed by questions about whether and how well the threat of terrorism emanating from Afghanistan has really been addressed. The president has already committed to prolonging some U.S. engagement with Afghanistan, telling its military commanders that they should stop at nothing to make ISIS pay for the service members, as Psaki said Monday. I can tell you that President has made it clear to his commanders that they should stop at nothing to make ISIS pay for the deaths of those American service members at the Kabul airport, Psaki said at the White House press briefing. Sunday's drone strike targeting a suspected car bomb headed to the airport killed 9 members of the one family, including 6 children, according to a relative of those killed who spoke to the local journalist working with CNN. U.S. Central Command, which oversees U.S. military missions throughout the region, has said earlier they were assessing the possibilities of civilian casualties. As the U.S. presence drew to the close, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken convened an international ministerial on Afghanistan meeting virtually with members of the coalition present in Afghanistan and other allies, and the United Nations Security Council met in New York. The Secretary Council approved the resolution for creating the safe passage zone for people seeking to leave Afghanistan from Kabul airport after the U.S. withdrawal from the country. The Council is relying on the Taliban to secure a safe passage out from for Afghans and foreign nationals seeking to leave the country, officials said. These stories have been updated with additional development Monday. CNN's Richard Loss at the United Nations in New York contributed to this report.